You are quietly dying every single morning, willingly surrendering your mind to a chaotic world. But there is an ancient, hidden back door out of this invisible prison. Watch until the very end, because this final truth will either break your ego or make you absolutely indestructible. You are dying. Not in the dramatic, cinematic sense of a ticking time bomb or a terminal illness, but in a quiet, agonizingly slow erosion of the soul that happens every single morning. Before your feet even touch the cold bedroom floor, your hand instinctively reaches out in the dark. A glowing screen flickers to life, and just like that, you willingly surrender your mind to the chaos of the world. A barrage of notifications, the manufactured outrage of strangers, the suffocating weight of endless expectations. In that fleeting second between sleep and wakefulness, your inner peace is violently hijacked. We are drowning in an ocean of infinite information, yet we are starving to death for a single ounce of silence. We are supposedly the most connected generation in the history of human civilization. Yet, if you look deep into the mirror, you will see a stranger staring back. A fragmented soul completely severed from its core. This perpetual exhaustion, this hollow ache of being lost in a crowded room, is not a personal failure. It is the silent plague of our modern era, and it is entirely by design. But what if I told you there is a hidden back door out of this invisible prison? A psychological operating system forged in the fires of ancient empires, used by both enslaved men and the most powerful emperors to not just survive a chaotic world, but to conquer it from within. Sovereign mindset welcomes you. If you are tired of merely existing as a pawn in the world's endless noise, if you are ready to reclaim your mind and forge an unshakable inner fortress, then hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell. Let this be the very first intentional choice you make today, so we can embark on this transformative journey together. To begin this reclamation, we must confront the greatest tragedy of the modern human. It is not laziness. It is not the inability to hustle or grind. The true tragedy is watching someone work themselves to the bone, sacrificing their time and their youth without ever knowing where they are actually going. Why do so many of us fall into this trap of a rotting existence? Because we have completely lost, or perhaps never even established, what ancient philosophers called a firm purpose. I want you to look at the bleeding reality of your own life. You drag yourself to a corporate desk for 8, maybe 10 hours a day. You crush your key performance indicators. You chase that elusive promotion. Yet every night when you return home and stare blankly at the dark ceiling, a terrifying emptiness swallows you whole. Or consider the devoted parents spinning endlessly in the grueling hamster wheel of paying bills, chauffeuring children, and maintaining the illusion of a perfect household, only to wake up one morning realizing they have become nothing more than pre-programmed biological machines. This soul-crushing fatigue does not stem from a physical depletion of calories. It is the agonizing cry of a spirit devoid of a guiding meaning. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca captured this beautifully and ruthlessly when he declared that if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. So how do we forge this unbreakable purpose? You must ruthlessly separate your true purpose from mere external goals. Buying a house, driving a luxury car, or securing an executive title are external goals. They are fragile illusions that can be ripped away from you in an instant by a shifting economy, a sudden illness, or a fickle boss. A firm purpose must be an untamed fire burning from within, anchored in core virtues that no earthly power can confiscate. Think of the ancient Stoic metaphor of the archer. The archer's external goal is to hit the center of the target. But his true internal purpose is to draw the bowstring and release the arrow with absolute focus, mastery, and the highest standard of his own character. Once that arrow leaves the bow, a sudden gust of wind might blow it off course. The prey might step aside. Whether the arrow strikes the bullseye is ultimately out of his hands. But the act of being an exceptional archer, of operating with absolute, uncompromising dedication, is entirely within his sovereign control. Bring this ancient wisdom into the sterile walls of your office. Your purpose is not to please your manager at all costs, just to beg for a raise. Your purpose is to be a worker of profound integrity, solving complex problems with intellect and relentless dedication. Walk into your home and realize your purpose is not to force your children to be top of their class just to inflate your own ego. Your purpose is to be an endlessly patient guide, fiercely loving them and modeling what true human decency looks like. When you anchor the entire weight of your existence to these internal values, you become completely immune to the despair that follows failure. You are no longer a wandering ghost at the mercy of the world's judgment, because your internal compass is permanently locked onto the true north of virtue and self-mastery. Once this internal compass is permanently locked onto the true north of your own virtue, you are finally ready to face the brutal storms of reality, bringing us to the hardest yet most liberating truth you will ever swallow. You are not the architect of the universe, and the desperate, bleeding knuckle grip you keep on the events of your life is exactly what is tearing your mind apart. Look closely at the anatomy of your own anxiety. When your chest tightens in the middle of the night, when your breath grows shallow and your mind races through endless catastrophic scenarios, what are you actually agonizing over? You are suffocating under the weight of things you cannot change. We live in an era that worships the illusion of absolute control. We are sold the lie that if we just optimize our routines, track our sleep, micromanage our diets, and curate our social media feeds perfectly, we can insulate ourselves from the tragedies of human existence. But life is inherently wild, untamed, and deeply indifferent to your carefully laid out plans. A sudden market crash can obliterate your life savings. A microscopic virus can shut down the globe. A single careless driver swerving into your lane can alter the trajectory of your physical body forever. Or, on a more mundane level, a colleague might simply decide they do not like you, no matter how hard you try to appease them. The Stoic slave-turned-philosopher Epictetus recognized this madness 2,000 years ago and distilled the cure into a single razor-sharp doctrine, the Dichotomy of Control. There are things that are up to us, and there are things that are not. It sounds deceptively simple, almost like a child's riddle, yet fully internalizing it requires nothing less than the complete ego death of the modern individual. We spend our entire lives bleeding our emotional energy dry, screaming at the rain for making us wet. You cannot control the weather, the economy, the political climate, or the opinions and actions of the people around you. Every second you spend obsessing over these external variables is a second you are voluntarily handing over the keys of your own mind to the chaotic world. You are making yourself a slave to circumstance. True sovereignty begins the very second you drop the rope in this unwinnable tug-of-war against reality. This is not about passive resignation or adopting the bleak, nihilistic mindset of a victim. It is a profound, aggressive reallocation of your vital energy. Imagine taking all the panicked, fractured energy you currently waste on worrying about how others perceive you and pouring it entirely into how you perceive yourself. You cannot control if a client rejects your proposal, but you have absolute dictatorial control over how meticulously you prepare for it and how much grace you display when they walk away. You cannot control if the person you deeply love decides to break your heart, but you have absolute control over your capacity to heal, to remain tender, and to refuse to let bitterness poison your future. To master this is to practice Amor Fati, the love of fate. It is not merely tolerating the hand you are dealt with gritted teeth. It is actively embracing it as if you had chosen it yourself. When the storm hits, you do not cower in the corner wishing for blue skies. You step out into the rain, feeling the cold water on your skin, and you realize that this exact moment, with all its friction and frustration, is the necessary terrain of your existence. You stop demanding that reality conform to your fragile expectations, and instead, you rise to meet reality exactly as it is. In this profound surrender, a strange and beautiful silence descends upon the mind. The frantic noise of what if is finally replaced by the calm, unbreakable resolve of what is, leaving you fortified and ready to use whatever life throws your way. But surrendering to the reality of what you cannot control does not mean becoming a passive victim to the cruelty of life. Rather, it is the exact foundation required to turn that cruelty into your greatest weapon. If there is one universal guarantee in the human experience, it is that you will suffer. You will face grief that hollows out your chest, betrayals that make you question your own sanity, and failures so humiliating they leave an acidic taste in your mouth. Our modern instinct is to run from this pain at all costs. We numb ourselves with endless scrolling. We sedate our minds with synthetic pleasures. And we build comfortable, frictionless lives, hoping the tragedy of existence will somehow pass over our doors. We have convinced ourselves that a good life is a life devoid of hardship. Yet, if you look at the men and women who have truly left an indelible mark on history, who possess an aura of undeniable gravity and quiet strength, you will find that none of them were forged in comfort. They were forged in the crucible of immense, unrelenting adversity. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a man who possessed near infinite absolute power, yet spent a significant portion of his reign facing plagues, betrayals from his closest allies, and endless, brutal warfare on the frozen frontiers of the empire. He did not retreat into the luxury of his palaces to wallow in self-pity. Instead, sitting alone in his war tent by candlelight, he wrote to himself one of the most powerful psychological reframings in human history. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not just a poetic affirmation to read on a coffee mug. It is an active, aggressive alchemy of the soul. It is the conscious decision to look at the fire that is threatening to burn your house down and deciding to use it to forge your sword. When you adopt this sovereign perspective, pain ceases to be a meaningless punishment inflicted upon you by a cruel universe. It transforms into profound, necessary data. It becomes the exact training ground designed specifically to test the virtues you claim to hold. It is incredibly easy to be patient when everything is going your way. It is incredibly easy to be kind when you are surrounded by love. But what happens when you are exhausted, financially ruined, and falsely accused? That is when the true test begins. The obstacle is not blocking your path. The obstacle is your path. The terrible manager who micromanages you is not a curse. They are a masterclass in developing unbreakable emotional regulation and stoic patience. The devastating financial loss is not the end of your story. It is the brutal stripping away of your attachment to material wealth, forcing you to discover the intrinsic value of your own resourcefulness. We must stop viewing our scars as ugly reminders of our brokenness. A bone that breaks and heals becomes stronger at the exact site of the fracture. A mind that fractures under the weight of tragedy, but chooses to process that tragedy through the lens of purpose, becomes virtually indestructible. You must train yourself to lean into the friction. The next time you are faced with a crisis, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" force yourself to ask, "What is this trying to teach me? How can I use this exact situation to practice courage, temperance, or justice?" This shift in perspective is terrifying to the weak, but it is absolute liberation to the sovereign mind. It means the world can no longer harm you. Even when life throws its darkest, most poisonous venom your way, you possess the internal metabolic engine to process it, strip it of its toxicity, and turn it into the very fuel that propels you forward. You become untouchable, not because you avoid pain, but because you have mastered the art of consuming it. When you learn to metabolize your pain into power, a profound shift occurs in how you perceive the fleeting moments of your existence, forcing you to confront the ultimate thief of human potential: time. We walk through our days completely intoxicated by the delusion of tomorrow. We push our dreams, our apologies, our personal growth, and our deepest desires into a mythical, non-existent future. I will start writing that book next year. I will spend more quality time with my children when things slow down at work. I will finally take control of my physical health when the holidays are over. We live as though we have an infinite, unending bank account of days, squandering the present moment with a casual arrogance that borders on the absurd. We trade hours of our irreplaceable lives for dopamine hits from glowing screens, engaging in petty arguments with strangers on the internet, and agonizing over the trivial dramas of a society that will not remember our names a century from now. Seneca observed this tragic human flaw and delivered a devastating verdict. We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it. If someone were to break into your home and steal a handful of cash from your wallet, you would be furious. You would call the authorities, you would lock your doors, and you would fight to protect your property. Yet, every single day, you allow meaningless distractions, toxic people, and trivial anxieties to rob you of hours of your life. And you do so with a willing smile. Money can be earned back. Property can be replaced. But time? Time is the only currency in the universe that is absolutely finite. Once a second ticks by, it is swallowed by the abyss of eternity, never to be recovered. To break free from this hypnotic state of wastefulness, the sovereign mind embraces the ancient practice of memento mori. Remember that you must die. For many, this sounds excessively morbid or depressing. Modern culture goes to extraordinary lengths to hide death, wrapping it in euphemisms and sanitizing it behind the closed doors of hospitals. But the Stoics saw the constant awareness of mortality not as a source of despair, but as the ultimate, illuminating spotlight of truth. Death is not a distant event waiting for you at the end of a long road. Death is happening right now. Every day you have lived up to this exact moment already belongs to death. When you truly accept that your time is bleeding out, a radical, almost aggressive clarity takes over your life. The trivial nonsense that used to ruin your day suddenly evaporates. Are you really going to spend one of your final, precious days on this earth furious because someone cut you off in traffic? Are you going to spend another evening silently resenting your spouse instead of having the difficult, vulnerable conversation that could heal your marriage? Memento Mori forces you to strip away the fat of your existence. It demands that you stop living a rehearsal. There is no second act. There is no practice run. This is it. You are on the stage, the clock is running, and the curtain will eventually fall, often without any warning. Let the shadow of your inevitable end be the very thing that wakes you up. Let it inject a fierce, passionate urgency into how you love, how you work, and how you engage with the simple, profound miracle of just being alive. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to become the person you were meant to be. The only moment you have, the only moment you will ever have, is right now. Embracing the shadow of your own mortality strips away the meaningless noise, leaving you with the singular, urgent task of fortifying the only sanctuary that truly belongs to you. After we have defined our purpose, surrendered our illusions of control, transmuted our pain into power, and acknowledged the ticking clock of our lives, we must do the quiet, daily labor of building what Marcus Aurelius called the Inner Citadel. You can read all the philosophy in the world, you can memorize the quotes, and you can feel a temporary surge of motivation coursing through your veins. But without daily, relentless integration, it is all completely useless. The sovereign mind is not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It is a living, breathing fortress that must be defended and rebuilt every single day, brick by agonizingly heavy brick. Look at how you construct your days. Are you reacting blindly to the demands of the world, or are you acting with intentional, sovereign design? Building the inner citadel requires carving out moments of profound isolation and self-interrogation. It requires the discipline to sit quietly with your own thoughts, without the crutch of a podcast, a video, or music, and face the raw reality of who you are becoming. This is why the ancient practice of the evening review is so critical. At the end of every day, before exhaustion pulls you into sleep, you must put yourself on trial. You must brutally and honestly examine your actions. Where did I act out of fear today? Where did I allow my temper to override my reason? Did I waste the precious currency of my time on frivolous distractions? Did I hold true to the internal compass of my virtues? Or did I compromise my soul for a fleeting moment of external validation? You do not do this to drown in guilt. You do this to course correct. You do this to ensure that the walls of your citadel are stronger tomorrow than they were today. As you meticulously build this fortress, you will notice a profound transformation taking place deep within your core. You will begin to cultivate a quiet, terrifyingly deep confidence. Not the loud, fragile arrogance of the modern ego, which constantly demands attention and validation from others. This is a silent strength. When the world outside descends into chaos, when the economy crumbles, when societal outrage peaks, and when tragedy strikes, you will not be swept away by the panic. While others are running frantically, consumed by fear and anxiety, you will be anchored deep into the bedrock of your own character. You will be able to retreat into the quiet sanctuaries of your mind, finding absolute peace and clarity amidst the external roaring. This is the ultimate promise of the sovereign mindset. It is not a promise of an easy life. It is not a magical formula that will make you wealthy, famous, or perpetually happy. It is something infinitely more valuable. It is the promise of unshakable self-possession. It is the guarantee that no matter what hell reality throws at you, you will remain unbroken. You will stand at the edge of the abyss, looking down into the darkness, and you will not blink, because you know exactly who you are, what you control, and what you are willing to endure. The world is desperate for this kind of strength. It is desperate for individuals who cannot be bought, who cannot be broken, and who refuse to surrender their peace to the chaos. The blueprint has been laid out before you, passed down through the centuries by men who walked through the fire and emerged as steel. The only question that remains is whether you have the courage to pick up the tools and begin building. Your fortress awaits. In the end, Cultivating a sovereign mind is the ultimate rebellion against a chaotic, distracted, and fragile modern world. We are constantly sold the illusion that we can control every external variable of our existence. Yet true freedom is found only in complete surrender to the dichotomy of control. By relinquishing our desperate grip on the unchangeable, we reclaim our vital emotional energy. This energy must then be directed toward an aggressive alchemy of the soul, transforming inevitable pain, heartbreak, and failure into the very fuel that forges our resilience. Amor Fati teaches us to love our fate, while Memento Mori serves as a relentless reminder that our time is our most finite, irreplaceable currency. When we stop squandering our days on trivial anxieties and toxic distractions, we unlock a fierce urgency to live intentionally. Finally, this philosophy is meaningless without daily, rigorous execution. The Inner Citadel is not a gift. It is a fortress built brick by brick through brutal self-reflection and disciplined action. It is the quiet sanctuary of the mind that remains unbroken regardless of the external storms. Ultimately, the sovereign mindset is not about avoiding the fire of life, but learning to walk through it without burning, emerging as unbreakable steel. You possess all the tools necessary for this transformation. The blueprint is in your hands. The choice to build is entirely yours. True power does not come from bending the world to your will, but from mastering your own internal responses so completely that the world's chaos can no longer disturb your peace. Adversity, pain, and our inevitable mortality are not cruel punishments to be avoided, but the necessary forge required to test your virtues and shape an indestructible character. Start by rigorously practicing the dichotomy of control. Whenever you feel panic or anger rising, pause and ask yourself, is this within my absolute control? If it is not, like a sudden market shift, someone else's opinion of you, or the traffic on your commute, mentally drop the rope. Shift your entire focus to your immediate response, your integrity, and your effort. Furthermore, institute a quiet 5-minute evening review before sleep. Sit without your phone, without music, and honestly evaluate your day. Acknowledge where you let fear dictate your actions, and make a firm, conscious decision to course correct tomorrow. What is one specific thing in your life right now that you need to stop worrying about because it is entirely out of your control? Please kindly share your thoughts in the comments section below. It is a great way for everyone to exchange perspectives and learn from one another. Finally, if you found value in this message, please subscribe to the channel to support our work. Your subscription gives us the motivation to keep creating deep, impactful content for you.